Hey, it's Dave here. After creating my previous video on Zigbee2MQTT, I've decided to make a follow-up on how to run multiple Zigbee2MQTT coordinators, including the steps to add a second physical device, along with answering some of the questions that weren't covered in the last video. Thanks to the positive feedback and comments, I've listened, and I've made this video for you guys. Now, while this video is primarily about using multiple Zigbee2MQTT instances, I'll be covering some bonus troubleshooting steps like moving Zigbee devices from one coordinator to the other, or changing a channel ID later on when you've already got devices paired to smooth out some of the processes. I recommend heading over to the description section and making use of the chapter markers so you can jump to the parts you need. To add multiple instances of Zigbee2MQTT, you're going to need to head over to the add-on store and add an additional repository. If you go to Settings and go to Add-ons and then go to Add-on Store. Before I do that, I'm just going to show you what happens if you've already got one installed. Go to Search and type in Zigbee. And you can see here, this is one I've installed earlier, and you'll notice it's got the vertical orange line, and that's because it's already installed. If I click on it, I can't install it, I can only uninstall it. But we want a second instance. So what we're going to do is click on those three vertical dots, and then select Repositories. And now from here, you can already see this is one I've added earlier using the repository address. Now officially it's not supported, but you can get around this by using a variant of the web address. And you've got 6 choices in total. You can either add a single / at the end of the web address, or 2 /, or you can change from HTTP to HTTPS. Use that address and then repeat it 2 more times with a single and a double /. In this case, I'm going to be using the HTTPS address, and I'm going to add a single / at the end. So you can see there, I've got the whole address and I've just added a single /. I'm going to go ahead and click Add. And now you can see I've got 2 Zigbee2MQTT repositories. The one that's grayed out is the one that's already been installed and is running, and the one with remove as a choice is the one we've just added. I'm going to click Close. And before you can go any further, you're going to need to restart Home Assistant, and then we can go to the next stage where we can add that new add-on. Go to Developer Tools. Click Restart. And then just select Restart. Once Home Assistant has restarted, we're now going to go back to Settings. Then we're going to go to Add-ons. Click on Add-on Store. And now from the search, we're going to type in Zigbee. And you'll see here, we've now got 6 choices instead of 3, which we had earlier. And if I just zoom in, you can see we've got Zigbee2MQTT with the orange horizontal line, which is the one that's in use and installed. And we've got the one below it, which is the new one. We're going to click on the one below. And we're going to go ahead and click Install. Once that's installed, we're going to leave these settings as they are initially. We're going to check Show in Sidebar, and we'll leave those as they are for now, and do not click Start just yet. If you go to the configuration tab, now there's a few settings you're going to need to change. This one here is the data path, and that must be different. If you leave that the same, when you start the service, what it's going to do is conflict and overwrite the settings of your other Zigbee to MQTT instance, which will be a nightmare. I'm just going to add a number at the end, so I'm just going to put the number 2. From SOCAT, you're also going to want to change the listening port to the next number up. So I'm going to change it from 8485 to 8486. And then go ahead and click Save. We're also going to need to change the networking port to match the listening port. So that's also now going to be 8486. And then go ahead and click Save. Head back over to the Info tab. Now shortly we're going to be wanting to make some changes to the Zigbee to MQTT YAML file. And that YAML file is going to be pointing to this path that we've set. Now this file won't exist until you initially hit Start. I'm just going to prove that before I hit Start and navigate to File Editor, because this is something that might catch you out. So I'm just going to launch File Editor, and I'm going to browse to the root directory. And you'll see I've already got one folder called Zigbee to MQTT, which is my primary coordinator. But what I'm expecting to see is another folder called Zigbee to MQTT2. If I go back to Settings, I'm going to go back onto Add-ons, back into that new Zigbee to MQTT which I've installed, and I'm going to go ahead and click Start. Now when I go back to File Editor, I'm expecting to see a new directory and configuration.yaml file along with some other stuff. So I'm just going to navigate to that path. And now you can see the second folder is showing. If I click into there, and you've got this configuration.yaml. We're not going to change anything just yet, but make note of that location as you'll need to know it later on. Before we get started, there's one important step I recommend. Physically unplug your existing Zigbee to MQTT coordinator. If you're using two SL-ZB06 coordinators, they will likely default to the same device name, so having both of them plugged in at the same time can cause conflicts or make it difficult to tell which one is which. With the original one temporarily unplugged, we can safely connect the new coordinator, find it on the network, rename it, assign it a static IP before both are on the network at the same time. This helps eliminate any possible confusion or the risk of accidentally configuring the wrong device. And don't worry, I'll remind you later in this video when it's safe to plug the original one back in. In order to find the IP address of your Zigbee coordinator, I'm going to show you a list of ways, and hopefully one of them will put you in the right direction. Now, assuming you've got the SL-ZB06, there's actually two names it can be known as. If you open up any web browser and then paste the following into the web address field, in this example I'm using slzb-06.local, then press enter, and it should take you directly to the web interface. However, I will warn you, if you have got two identical models, they're going to default to this name, and if you've left the original one plugged in, your guess is as good as mine as to which one is going to be resolved and take you to that web page. Assuming this is the correct one and the other one's unplugged, you would just scroll down, and under Ethernet status you can see the IP address here. And you can also see the MAC address. Now the SLZB-06 is the preferred one if you're using Zigbee2MQTT. Now take this with a pinch of salt because I haven't got credible source to back up my claims, but there is also another variant which is SLZB-06M, which some forums and communities seem to think it's more tailored for Zigbee to Home Assist or Zigbee to HA. If you've got that model by accident, which I have, and I've got a feeling the M stands for moron because I've ordered the wrong one, or maybe it stands for mistake. Let me know in the comments if you know what the M actually means. I'm just going to open up another tab, and I'm going to paste the same address but put in an M after 6. And that will also take you to the web interface. And it's basically identical, and you scroll down to the Ethernet status. And once again, I can see the IP address, and I can also see the MAC address. Assuming your router supports mDNS, you should be able to resolve that. If for some reason you can't, I'm going to show you a couple other tricks which will hopefully find the IP address. The second option you can do is if you open command from Windows and make sure you run it as admin. So if you just type in cmd and then select run as administrator, you're going to get some sort of a user account control prompt and click yes. And once opened, it's going to look something like this. What we're going to do is run a ping command, and again it depends which version of the Zigbee coordinator you've got. So we're just going to run a ping and then type this in. Then hit enter, and that should resolve a web address. And in this case you can see I've got the IP. If you've got the other version that has an M, just add that at the end and click enter, and that should also resolve. Now if you have got the device definitely connected and for whatever reason it's not resolving, it might be a stale DNS entry which you need to clear. I'm just going to show you that command as well. So you may need to type in ipconfig //flushdns and then hit enter. Now the reason I told you to run command as administrator is there has been some scenarios where when you're running that particular command, if you just ran it as a standard user, it might throw up an error message about this command requires elevation, which is why I just wanted you to run it as administrator so you don't run into that issue. Navigating onto my home router, what I'm going to do is look at devices on the network and figure out which one is the Zigbee coordinator that I've connected via Ethernet. So I'm just going to go to devices, and currently what it's doing is it's showing both wired and wireless. I could just scroll here and look for anything that begins with SLZB. And in this occasion, it was actually very easy because you can already see that's the Zigbee coordinator that I'm looking for. It's got the IP address, and it's also listing the MAC address here. Depending on the modem router, you may have slightly better options to navigate. There's another option from mine where it's got device map. I'm going to click on that. And here you can see it's actually listing Ethernet ports. And in this case, I've only got a few to look at. And you can see again, this is the Zigbee coordinator, the second one I've added. And you can see below there, that's the first one, which I've already got set up and configured. If I go ahead and click on this one, there you can see it's given me the IP address and the MAC address, which are the two things I need because I'm also going to set a DHCP reservation. Once you've got the IP address of the Zigbee coordinator, we're now going to open up a web browser and navigate to its IP address. Now, before I deep dive into which settings you need to change, there's two important things we're going to do first. Because this is a second device, now in my case it's actually got a slightly different name, so it's not going to affect me, but if you had two identical devices, they're probably going to have the same name, which is going to cause hiccups with your network. So if you head over to Settings and Tools, and we're going to go to General Settings, and here where it's got the device name, I don't need to change it, but if you've got the same one, what I would do, just add an underscore, and let's just say one of them is in the garage and the other one is in the hallway. We'll give it an underscore and just add garage or hall at the end, and that way you can instantly differentiate each one with no problem, and it won't give you any headaches with two devices with the same name existing on the same network. Once you've done that, go ahead and click Save, and then I would click Restart, and then give it a couple of minutes to go through its cycle, and then you're going to go back onto the page again. Once that's restarted and you're back in again, I'm just going to check if there's any pending firmware updates. So if you go into Settings and Tools and go to Firmware Updates, and you'll see we've got two options here, check for core updates and flash custom core firmware. I'm going to click on check for core updates, and you can see in this example it's showing I've got current version 2.8.1 dev 9, and it's showing that there's actually a later version where I can upgrade to 2.8.2. I'm going to go ahead and click the flash button and just wait for it to finish. And after the firmware update, it should automatically reboot itself. Once that's restarted, go to Settings and Tools, go to Firmware Update. While we're at it, we're going to go ahead and check for Zigbee updates too, because I've noticed the driver I'm using from this knowledge article is showing the EZSP driver is experimental. So I'm going to go ahead and check for updates. I'm going to select Flash Zigbee Coordinator and just wait for it to download the firmware for that too. And then just click Close for update done. Now that we've renamed the Zigbee coordinator and checked to see if there was any pending firmware updates, I'm now going to show you the remaining settings that need to be changed. If you go to Mode, just make sure Zigbee coordinator is checked. And because I've connected it directly in via the network cable, you'll want to have Ethernet connection checked. If you go to the Networking tab, just leave that with DHCP status checked. Later on, I'm going to show you how to create a DHCP reservation so it has a fixed IP address. If you go to Z2M and ZHA, there's one change you're going to need to make here where it references serial port. Now at the moment it's set to 6638, and if I navigate to my primary Zigbee coordinator, you can see that is also set to 6638, and they can't both be the same value. So what I'm going to do is just head back over to my second coordinator, and I'm going to change that value to the next number above. So I'm just going to click on that up arrow, and I'm going to go ahead and click save, and it's going to restart one final time. And just click restart now. And wait for it to finish restarting. Now to set up DHCP reservation, I'm going to head over to my home router and go to the local network section. Now depending on your home router you're using, these settings will likely be completely different, but hopefully this will give you an idea of how it works. So I'm going to click on that and wait for it to load. Now I'm going to scroll down, and I'm just going to click add new static lease. I'm just going to give this a name, and I'm going to call it what it was already showing as. Now I'm going to find the MAC address, which I got earlier. So I'm just selecting that. And now I'm going to type in the IP address of the Zigbee coordinator. And you can see there it's confirming it, along with the MAC address tying up. And I'm just going to select the add button. And that's the DHCP reservation set. For those of you who disconnected your original Zigbee coordinator, it's now safe to go ahead and plug it back into your network. Now I'm going to cover how to use a Wi-Fi scanner to help determine the best Zigbee channel to use for your coordinator. But to be honest, you can probably just skip this section, and if you want to keep things simple, just set your first coordinator to channel 15 and your second one to channel 25, and you'll most likely be just fine. That said, I'll show you how to scan properly in case you want to optimize things or you're working in a busy Wi-Fi environment. If you're going to want to scan your Wi-Fi so you can see what channels are currently in use and reduce noise, this is a really good site to go to because they have a free app available called Wi-Fi Man. If you head over to this page, go to the unified toolbar and then select Downloads. Scroll down and look for mobile and desktop apps. And then if you're using a desktop PC, click on that computer icon. And from this download section, it's going to give you the option to have the Windows, Mac or Linux version. I only have a Windows PC, so I'm going to go ahead and download that. Now before I download that, I thought I'd mention the Wi-Fi Man is also available on the Android Play Store, and it's on the iOS App Store. But for some reason on the iOS App Store it seems to be limited and requires you to have a unified gateway console. So you're kind of limited really to either have the Windows app or the Android version in order to perform these troubleshooting steps. Once you've installed the Windows version, it's going to look exactly like this. You're going to want to filter it by 2.4 GHz because that's the range that the Zigbee runs through. And in this example, all you can see is channel 1, 6 and 11 are in use. So in this scenario, using channel 15, 20 or 25 for my Zigbee coordinators will have no problems whatsoever. For the Android version, it's pretty similar. It takes you straight to this page once you've downloaded and installed it. And on the bottom, you're going to want to click Scan, where it will just scan to see what channels are in use. Make sure you've selected 2.4 because there's no need to do 5. And in this demonstration, as also shown earlier from the PC, you can see that channels 1, 6 and 11 are the only ones in use. So if you have your primary Zigbee coordinator as channel 15, and then you've just got channels 20 or 25 to choose for your second Zigbee coordinator. Now I'm going to talk you through to making some changes to the Zigbee2MQTT configuration.yaml file. From your Zigbee coordinator webpage, if you first head over to sedm and sedha, and you're going to copy this code to the clipboard, and then head over to Home Assistant. If you go to File Editor, and then we're just going to browse to the second folder that should exist, which is Zigbee2MQTT2, or whatever you called the base path. Go into that, and then click on configuration.yaml. And you should see at the moment it's going to look something like this. And there's a couple of settings you're going to need to change straight away. The base topic needs to be set to 2 or whatever you set it to earlier. I'm just going to quickly overlap the settings so I can describe this better. So from the configuration tab of your Zigbee2MQTT, this is the part where it says data path, and it needs to be the same as that. For server, you've got 2 choices. You can either change localhost to the IP address of your MQTT server, which is pretty much going to be your Home Assistant web address, which is going to look something like that. Or if you just copy this link, that works perfectly fine and you haven't got to enter any IP info. We're now going to paste the clipboard section that came from the Zigbee coordinator web page. And I'm just going to move it to the appropriate location. So this particular section needs to go under serial. So I'm just going to cut that out, remove those brackets, and just paste it there. And it's referencing transmit power. I'm just going to copy that and put that under the advanced section. Just going to tidy up the indentation, and then we can remove that part of the code. You're also going to want to change the channel ID, otherwise it's going to default to channel 11. Now heading over to this web page, from the smlite.tech web page, it actually recommends you should be using channel 15 for your Zigbee coordinator. Now, assuming that you've set your primary one already up as 15, they've also put together a really good diagram of all the different channel IDs. Now, I would personally have the first one as 15, and then you've got a choice between 20 and 25 for the next one. So I'm assuming you've already set 15 as your first Zigbee coordinator. We're going to go ahead and select the second one as channel 25. Go back to Home Assistant again, and we're just going to change channel to 25. And you're going to also need to enter your MQTT login details, otherwise it won't connect. It will say something like not authorized. If you've already got your first one set up and working, you can somewhat cheat and just copy it from the configuration.yaml of your first Zigbee2MQTT, which I'm just going to very quickly do. I'm just going to go back into File Editor and just open it twice. So you'll see if I go into this one and go to configuration.yaml, some of these parts you can actually copy. So if I navigate to this particular section, I can just go ahead and just copy all of this. Go back to the second instance, and I'm just going to replace it like that, and then go ahead and hit save. Now, if for some reason those logins aren't working, what you can do is just create a generic login. So if you just go to settings, go to people, go to users, And you're just going to create a generic account, give it a display name, username, password, and you don't need to check administrator. It's not required if you're just using it for communicating with MQTT. In this example, I don't need it, so I'm just going to click out and go back to where I was. If you haven't already, save the changes, and now what we're going to do is navigate back to settings. Then we're going to go to add-ons. Then we're going to go to the second instance, which is this one here. And we're just going to go ahead and restart and then very quickly go to the log section. And what I'm hoping to see is it will say something like connected to MQTT, which you can see it already has. If I just hover over to here, it's got connecting to MQTT server and connected to MQTT server there. That is what you want it to see, and it means it is working. I'm just going to quickly sabotage it by intentionally putting the wrong MQTT password, just so you can see what the error message will look like if you had entered it wrong yourself. I'm just going to quickly navigate back to File Editor. And I'm just going to intentionally make the password wrong. I'm just going to hit save. Then I'm going to go to settings, go to add-ons, then go to the Zigbee2MQTT. I'm going to go ahead and hit restart and then quickly go to the logs. And what I'm expecting is going to say something about connecting to MQTT error. And there you can see MQTT failed to connect, exiting, connection reviews not authorized. So just have a look for that in the logs. If you find it's not starting, there's a good chance you may have put the password in wrong. What you'll also find is that when you click on the add-on from the sidebar, you'll probably have that message, which again is almost certainly something is wrong with the configuration.yaml and is likely you've referenced the wrong server or the wrong password. Now this part of the video is optional. After installing 2 Zigbee2MQTT instances, you've probably realized that both of these shortcuts have exactly the same name. Unfortunately, it's not possible to rename them. However, there is a kind of workaround. If you head over to the following GitHub page, there's a custom integration from Hacks, the Home Assistant community store, called has_ingress. What this allows you to do is create a custom side panel, which can then link to a shortcut of any add-in of your choosing. And it will look as follows in these examples. I'm going to walk you through these steps to create 2 shortcuts that will point to both of your Zigbee2MQTT add-ons. Only this time they can have different names, so you can easily differentiate which one is which. If we go back to Home Assistant, now before you can install this integration, you're going to need to have Hacks, the Home Assistant community store, already installed in your Home Assistant environment. If you haven't got that already, I've already made a video earlier, which I will link in the description. So pause this video, go to that, complete those steps, and then carry on from here. If you already have Hacks installed, navigate over to Hacks on the sidebar here. And what we're going to do is if you click on the 3 vertical dots and then click on Custom Repositories, you're then going to paste the following web address and then you're going to change it to integration. Then you're going to click add. And then you can just click the X to close that box. Now we're going to click on new and then we're going to do search. If you don't do that and you just do search and type in ingress, nothing's going to come up in your results. So just make sure, click on new. Now go to the search icon and type in ingress. and you should only get one result. Click on that. And then on the bottom right corner, click on download. And then click download again. And now we're going to go ahead and restart Home Assistant. If you go to Developer Tools, and we're just going to check the configuration.yaml, go ahead and click Restart. Restart Home Assistant and restart. Now that Home Assistant has restarted, we're going to make some changes to the Home Assistant configuration.yaml, not the Zigbee2MQTT one. So if you open File Editor, and you're going to navigate to configuration.yaml, which is this one here, and there's two ways you can play this. You can either paste it in here, so you're referencing ingress, and here is the name for the first coordinator. You can call this whatever you want, but it's something that you can relate to. So I've just called it Zigbee2MQTT1. That value you're going to leave as it is. You're then going to give it a title, and that title is what is going to appear on the sidebar. And then for the icon, that's going to use the Zigbee icon. And for the URL, what that is going to do is if I hover over to this one here, you can either right click and do copy link, or if you look on the bottom left corner, you'll see the link there too. It's easier to right click and do copy link. And what it is, if I just press enter a few times, you'll see here, that is the full link, but we don't want the whole link. We're actually starting from after the / and your Home Assistant URL. So the initial sort of prefix you're going to remove, and it's only that part that you're actually going to keep. And then you're just going to repeat the steps for the other one as well. Again, call it whatever you want, just something that you can relate to. I just called it Zigbee2MQTT2. Leave work mode as it is. The title is what you want it to appear on the sidebar. The icon is the Zigbee icon. And then this is the second section of the URL. Now, I like to split my configuration.yaml. If you're happy to just leave it in the root configuration.yaml, fine, go ahead, save it, go to Developer Tools, and then check the configuration and reboot Home Assistant. I'm going to quickly show you how to split it in case you want to. So I'm just going to delete that code, and I'm not going to save it. And if I scroll up here, what I'm going to do is add an entry here. Now I've already got a folder under config called ingress, and what I'm using is ingress here, and it's include directory merge named. And then I'm just going to go ahead and click save. And now I'm going to go to that directory because I've already made it. And if I scroll down, you'll see there's a config folder. I'm going to click on that. And now we're just looking for the ingress folder, which is here. I'm going to click into that folder. And now I'm going to create a file called Zigbee2MQTT.yaml. I could actually make one for each of them, but I've decided to just put them both in the same place. So I'm going to create a new file, save it as this, click OK, and now I'm just going to open the file, which takes me here. I'm going to paste this line of code, and there's going to be a slight difference. At the moment, you can see it's still got ingress referenced. Because it's been split, you don't need that. And you're just going to select all of it and hold down Shift and Tab. and it's going to move everything towards the left for the indentation. I'm just going to fix the indentation. I'm just adding 2 spaces underneath each of those. So it should look like that, and if you've done it correctly, you'll see a nice green dot here. So that's what the code is now going to look like. I've put it all into one file, but it's been split. Same outcome. Now I'm going to go ahead and click Save. Now I'm going to head over to Developer Tools, check the configuration.yaml. That's looking good. I'm now going to restart Home Assistant. Click Restart and wait for it to load up again. Once Home Assistant has restarted, you're now going to see 4 different shortcuts. These are the 2 that we added to the sidebar from the add-on, and these are the 2 we've added from that HACS integration. And you'll see here it's got Zigbee to MQTT1 and Zigbee to MQTT2. We're just going to confirm those shortcuts are working, which you can see they are. Now we know those shortcuts exist and are working, we're going to go ahead and remove these ones since we don't need them and they're essentially acting as a misleading duplicate. Head over to Settings, go to Add-ons, and we're going to repeat this step twice. We're going to go to the first one, click on that, and now we're going to uncheck Show in Sidebar. And if it's not already, make sure Start on Boot and Watchdog is enabled. Now we're going to go back one step and click on to the other one and do exactly the same. Uncheck Show in Sidebar and just check Watchdog is enabled. That just means it will restart if the add-on crashes. So the top 2 are checked and the bottom 2 are unchecked. Now when I zoom out, you can only now see the 2 custom shortcuts, which looks a lot nicer and more manageable and understandable. Now that you've got 2 Zigbee coordinators up and running, I'm just going to show you a few ways if you want to move devices from one coordinator to the other. You'll notice on the left side you can now see Zigbee to MQTT 1 and 2 as an option. Click on the first one, you can see various devices are showing, and when I go on to the new one, it's currently not showing anything. What I'm going to do now is remove this sensor known as cookie jar. Now before I go ahead and remove it, it's just worth clicking on the rename icon and just making note of the name and go ahead and copy it, because you've got any routines that use that device and you've moved it to the other coordinator, it's not going to default to the same name, which will break your routines. Now just click Close to remove that window. Now I'm going to click on the Remove Device icon. And it's going to give you 2 choices. You're going to check Force Remove, and you're going to leave Block from Joining Device again unchecked. Otherwise, it will prevent you from rejoining devices. If you do this by accident, don't worry, I'm going to show you later how to resolve that. Go ahead and click Delete. And we're just waiting for that to remove, which it says it's successfully been done. Now we're going to go over to the other coordinator. And we're going to click Permit Join. And I'm going to press and hold the pairing button on my Zigbee device so we can put it into pairing mode. And you can see there it's found the device and it's showing in a new coordinator. Now why it has added it, you'll notice it's got a completely random name. So this isn't going to be any good, because I won't be able to continue using it on any of my existing automations. Because I copied the name before deleting it, I can just paste it, check the box Update Home Assistant NTID, and then go ahead and click Rename the device. And now you can see the friendly name is cookie_jar. That way I've moved it over to the new Zigbee coordinator, and I've maintained the same name, so any automations I've previously created will resume from working. Now I'm going to go ahead and delete this device, but I'm going to intentionally prevent it from rejoining. So I'm going to go ahead and click Force Remove, and I'm also going to click Block from joining again, then click Delete. I can't think of a reason why I'd want to prevent it from joining again, but just in case you accidentally check this, I'm going to show you how to undo it. And you can see now the device has successfully been removed. And in order to remove it from that delete list, you're going to need to go into the configuration.yaml file of the Zigbee2MQTT instance. Go to File Editor, and we're going to navigate to the configuration.yaml file of the Zigbee2MQTT instance, not the Home Assistant one. Now we're going to browse down, and I just happen to know it's the second one, so I'm going to click on that. Then we're going to open configuration.yaml, and if I scroll down, you'll see here it shows block list, and it's listing the device. Now there's two ways you can do this. You can either delete both of these two lines, hit save, and restart the Zigbee2MQTT service, or if you had multiple devices and you only wanted to remove one of them, you would just delete it from that section there. Now if I delete all removed devices from the block list, but leave block list : showing like that, it's going to fire up an error message when you restart the Zigbee2MQTT service, because it's expecting the below list to be in an array, and to solve this you must show open and closed brackets, otherwise you're going to get an error. I'm going to go ahead and intentionally leave it wrong, and to make things misleading you'll see the green tick, so there's no errors in the configuration.yaml. We're now going to go to Settings, go to Add-ons, go to the Zigbee2MQTT instance. Now we're going to go ahead and restart, and then we're going to go straight to the logs. And you'll see here it's throwing up an error message refusing to start because configuration is not valid. Block list must be array. So that's a mistake I've made in the past, which I didn't understand why it wasn't working. Now we're going to go back into File Editor, and we're just going to fix it. You could have just deleted the whole of block list and it would have been fine. But for some reason, if you wanted to leave it there, just make sure to add the open and close brackets. Now we're going to click Save. We're going to go back into Settings, go to Add-ons, back into the Zigbee2MQTT service, restart, back into Logs, and now you can see there's no error messages and it's working. I just thought I'd mention that because that's a headache I've experienced, and in case you see that error, you now know what it is. Now I'm going to take you through the process of moving a Zigbee device from one coordinator to the other, but this time we're going to be making some changes to the configuration.yaml so they will automatically inherit the same name when they repair, so your automations will continue to work without having to make any changes. Plus this eliminates any human errors of accidentally renaming it slightly differently. The device we're going to be moving is cookie_jar, but before I remove that I'm just going to head over to File Editor, and we're going to navigate to the configuration.yaml file for that Zigbee2MQTT instance. I know it's this one here, and we're going to click on configuration.yaml. And you can see there's a list of various devices showing. And the one I'm referring to, it's here, it's cookie jar. And what we're going to do is copy both of those fields. We're not going to delete it, but we're going to copy both of those settings. And what we're going to do is go back into the Zigbee2MQTT 1, and we're going to go ahead and delete this cookie jar. So I'm going to click the bin icon. Go ahead and select Force Remove and click Delete. Now we're going to go back into the configuration.yaml file of the Zigbee2MQTT instance that you wish to transfer the device to. So I just know it's Zigbee2MQTT2. Click on that. And now I'm going to go into configuration.yaml, and under devices, I'm going to paste that entry as follows. Go ahead and click Save. Now unfortunately it's not as simple as just copy and paste, restart the service, and then the device is up and running. You have got to go through the repairing process, but it will automatically repair with the same name, which just eliminates human errors, and if you're doing multiple devices, this would be a bit smoother. We're now going to restart the service for changes in that configuration.yaml to take effect. Go to Settings, go to Add-ons. Now we're going to go to the second Zigbee2MQTT, where we're going to be transferring the devices to, and go ahead, click Restart. I'm just going to check the logs to make sure it's working in case I've made any mistakes. And that's looking good, it's all running. Now we're going to head back over to the second coordinator. The device won't automatically show, but what's going to happen, we're going to go ahead and click Permit Join, and I'm going to put the device in pairing mode. What's going to happen is it's not only going to pair, but it's going to automatically inherit the name cookie jar, because we've copied part of the YAML from one to the other. That's looking good. You can see it's got cookie_jar, which is promising. There's slightly more steps to do this, and there is a risk you might break your configuration.yaml. But if you've got multiple devices, you might want to consider this option. And I'd recommend before you make any changes to the configuration.yaml that you just make a copy and save it somewhere. So if you had made any mistakes, you could restore or overwrite it very quickly without too many headaches. I'm going to cover changing the channel ID of your Zigbee coordinator, but I'm going to do it from a scenario where you've already got devices paired to it. The steps I'm going to show you seem to be a bit of a hit and miss in terms of what you need to do to get it to work. I've tried this scenario multiple times, and it's almost as if I have to go through a different series of steps each time. You're going to need to change the channel ID from the configuration.yaml of the Zigbee coordinator, and it's highly likely you will need to repair these devices. So if you're going to be doing this, pick a slot where you've got a whole evening or weekend spare, depending on how many devices you're going to be transferring. If you go to File Editor, and you're going to be opening the configuration.yaml file of the Zigbee2MQTT instance that you wish to change the channel ID for. So open that file, and you'll see here it says channel, and in this scenario we're going to be changing it from channel 25 to 20. So there could be a scenario where for whatever reason that channel is overloaded and you're wanting to move it to a different one with less noise. Now we're going to go ahead and click Save. Now if you go back to Browse File System, sometimes you need to delete this file or rename it, and other times you don't. I'm going to go ahead and rename it, so that way if I wanted to revert back, I could. So that file is renamed or deleted. And for changes to apply, we're going to need to restart the service of that Zigbee2MQTT instance. go to settings, go to add-ons, and I know it's this second one here, so I'm going to click on it. I'm going to go ahead and click restart, then head over to the logs to see if there's any error messages. What we should be seeing is it's going to reference changing channel ID, which you can see here. It's changing channel from 25 to 20. And you can see there it's confirmed it has done it. So all looks good, but this next stage is a bit of a hit and miss as to terms to what steps I do to get it working. I'm now going to go back into the Zigbee2MQTT interface. Now the cookie jar is the only one I've got showing, but while it is there, if you click on the device and go to the Exposes tab, and I'm going to connect and disconnect the magnet to confirm if the state is or isn't changing. And in this occasion, it isn't working. Sometimes to get this working, if I click permit join again and put the device into pairing mode, you don't always get the notification on the bottom right, and it sort of repairs behind the scenes. Now I'm going to go back into the device. Again, this is a hit and miss, but now if I disconnect and reconnect the magnet, the contact state may or may not change. In this occasion, it still doesn't seem to have worked, so I'm going to give the repairing one more attempt. So it really does behave as if you've got to try multiple steps various times to get this to work. The device is now in pairing mode again. I'm just waiting to see if anything's happening. So that's in pairing mode, and I'm just going to go back into devices to see if the state of contact is changing or not. Go to the Exposes tab. Nope, still no luck. Now if it's being really stubborn, you may have to go ahead and just delete the device. Just copy the name before you delete it. Check force remove and click delete. Now we're going to re-add the device. Click permit join and put the device in pairing mode and just wait for it to come back. And now you can see the device is coming back. Because I've removed it, I've now got to rename it to the correct name for my automations to resume from working. So I'm just going to click here, change the name to cookie_jar, and check the box update Home Assistant entity ID and select rename. Bit of a fiddly one here, and I'll just warn you if you are changing the channel ID. I've had some times where I've just changed the channel ID in configuration.yaml, restarted the Zigbee2MQTT service, and it's continued to work fine, and other times you have to rename that backup file. I'm just going to go back into File Editor so I can show you where that is. So you may have to rename or delete that file. Then restart the Zigbee2MQTT add-on, repeat the pairing process again, and if that doesn't work, delete the device and try re-adding it. But it seems to be a real fiddly one. No matter how many times I try this, it never seems to be the same result or amount of steps. So that's how you change the channel ID, but warning, it can be very fiddly. I guess moral of the story is set the channel ID on your Zigbee coordinator before you add your devices, and then you won't have to go through those headaches. And that wraps up this deep dive into running multiple Zigbee to MQTT coordinators. You've now got everything from channel setup to device transfers and troubleshooting under your belt. I hope these extra steps I threw in were useful and help make the process a bit easier for you. If you've got any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments section, or better yet, come join my Discord channel and chat with others working on similar setups. If you found this helpful, give it a like and consider subscribing for more smart home automation tutorials. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.